Hello, and welcome to How to Play Park Trails. In Park Trails, you're a hiking enthusiast that's ready to step up your game with a regimented training schedule. But you don't want to be stuck alone on some boring gym treadmill when you could be out enjoying nature in one of the national parks. And to make your journey all the more interesting, you challenge friends to start hiking in parks that have been most recently founded, then gradually work your way back to the oldest parks. Will you hike easy trails that meander through level terrain, or will you push yourself to conquer some of the most exhilarating trails the national parks have to offer? Then again, you could just throw in the towel right now and simply enjoy the picturesque drives through the parks. Whatever you decide, it's time to find your park trails. Before we begin, let's look at some of the important information that's on each of the cards. First, each card has the name of a national park and the name of a trail or road in that park. These aren't really used during gameplay, but they set the theme for the game. The decade at the top of the card is what you'll use to sequence your cards during the game. This is the decade that this park was founded. At the bottom right is the trail difficulty and the point value. These points will be added to your score at the end of the game if this card is in sequence. The decades function in the same way as the numbers you're used to in a regular deck of cards. So there's 4 of each decade. However, you'll notice that there are some differences. 3 in each decade have the same point value because their trails are the same difficulty. But there's also in each decade 1 drive, which is worth 0 points. It keeps the sequence, but it doesn't score you any points at the end of the game. Note that in the 2010s, every park is the same, but each trail is different. But in many of the decades, every park is different. But it doesn't matter because the points are based off the trail difficulty. You can see in this example, 3 of the cards are worth plus 2 points at the end of the game, but the drive is worth 0. As the parks get older, the trails get more difficult and are thus worth more points. Once we get to the oldest parks, each trail is worth 3 points. There are also 2 wild cards in the deck. These can replace any card in the sequence and not break the sequence. However, they are worth minus 10 points if they are in your line at the end of the game. So let's start a game. The person who has hiked most recently is the first dealer. The dealer deals 10 cards out to each player. Then each player takes the cards they've been dealt and deals them out in a line straight out from them, starting with the closest and going farthest away. The draw pile is set near the middle of the table, and the top 3 cards are dealt face up next to that pile. This forms 2 draw cards and the discard pile. Before play begins, each player is allowed to peek at any 3 cards in their line. This should be kept secret, and they must be placed back in their original positions. Play begins with the player to the left of the dealer. On each turn, players have the option to do one of 2 possible actions. The first action, and most common, is draw. You may draw a card from the top of any of the 4 center piles. A drawn card may replace one from your own line face up, may replace one from your own line face down, or you may replace a face down card from an opponent's line with the drawn card face down. The cards that have been replaced are then placed on top of the discard pile. The second possible action any player can take on their turn is to peek or flip. Peek or flip means that you may peek at or flip over any 2 cards in your own line. If this is the action you're taking, you must declare whether you are peeking or flipping at the card that you intend to look at. If you accidentally flip over a card that is out of sequence, you immediately lose 10 points, and that card is replaced with a face-down card from the draw pile. Face-down cards are still in play, and may be replaced by any drawn card from any player. Once a card is turned face up, it cannot be changed. All your cards must be face up for your sequence to be complete. A sequence must run from the most recent decade to the oldest decade, that is, from the 2010s back through the 1800s. A correct sequence does not need to have one card from every decade, but the decades it does have need to be in order from most recent to oldest. After a player completes their action, play moves to the next player to the left. This continues until one player has completed their sequence of all 10 cards. Then you move on to scoring. The player who completes their sequence first receives a 10-point bonus at the end of the game. Each player also scores the point value of all the cards they have in sequence. Additionally, there are bonuses which either player can get at the end of the game. The 3 of a kind bonus means that if a player has 3 of a single decade in their sequence, they get an additional 10 points at the end of the game. The 4 of a kind bonus means that if a player has 4 of a single decade in their sequence, they receive a 20-point bonus. And finally, the first and last bonus means that if a player's first card is from 2010 and their last card is from 1800s and they have a full sequence, then they receive a +5 bonus. You can play just a single round, in which case after you add up the points you declare the winner, or you can play to a point value. We suggest 100 points. In this case, keep track of each round's score on a piece of paper and a notebook, and as you play the game, add each round's score to the previous. To start the next round, the deal passes to the player to the left, and play continues as before. Thank you for watching this How to Play Park Trails video. Hopefully you found it helpful. We do recommend reading the instruction booklet fully before playing your first game, as there are some points that are more fully covered than in this video.